Hello, my name is Katie and welcome to my wrap-up for the 12 Days of Bookmas readathon. This readathon ran from December 26th to January 6th? I think I have those dates right. Let me check. Yes. I will link the creators of the readathon and all the other pertinent information in the description box, although now that it's over, I'm not sure you actually need it. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to link my original video with my TBR, and if you want more information, you can go check that out. Well, I was a reading machine during the bulk of this readathon. I read like 9 books, which is kind of a lot. Maybe we'll just get into it. I'll just give you the prompts and let you know what I read, attempted to read, whatever. First prompt was 12 drummers drumming, read a book with music. I read The Kingdom of Back by Marie Lu for this. I enjoyed it. It follows the Mozart family, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Except in this book, the focus is on his sister, Nan Earl, and, kind of discussing how she was just as good as he was at the piano and composing and things of that nature. However, because she was female, that wasn't a world she was allowed to inhabit. So it kind of, it's kind of fantastical. It looks at this magical kingdom that they called the Kingdom of Back, and just discusses their interactions with said kingdom and how it affected their real lives. Now, this is based off a true story. The Mozart children did, in fact, used to play pretend about the Kingdom of Back, and I thought that was a really cool aspect. I was Googling a lot during this book, and it was an enjoyable read. I had a nice time with it. It was a nice little, palate cleanser type of book. Although there were a little bit heavier topics at times, it was just an easy book to get through. The next prompt was 11 Pipers Piping, read an audiobook. The audiobook I had planned to read for this didn't end up happening because I've been listening to the Count of Monte Cristo on audiobook. I have not finished it because it's like 50 hours long. So I'm still slowly working my way through that. The next prompt was 10 Lords of Leaping, read a historical fiction novel. For this, I read possibly up there on my favorite historical fiction novels of the year, and that is The Pull of the Stars by Emma Donoghue. This was so good. It follows a nurse during the influenza epidemic that was in the early 1900s, and she is in Ireland. She works in the maternity ward. However, in her ward they specifically send pregnant mothers who have the flu. And it's difficult because World War I is also happening at this time, so they're very short-staffed. There's not nearly enough people to go around to help all the people who are ill and need help. And it's just, she's exhausted, she's going through a lot. There's a lot of emotional turmoil going on in here, and it was just very well done because it not only looks at what's happening with the war and the flu, but it also kind of discusses how the impoverished people of Ireland are hit 10 times harder, and you can see the distinction between the different classes at the time. Just a really great read, really good. I read it so fast. Then we have 9 Ladies Dancing, read a book with a female protagonist. For this, I read The Secret Chapter by Genevieve Cogman. This is book 6, in the Invisible Library series, and we finally got a heist story. I knew there had to be one, and we got it in this. In this particular book, Irene, who is our female protagonist, she is an agent for the Invisible Library, which is a library that helps to keep the balance in this multiverse. And to do so, she acquires rare books from various worlds. In this particular book, she's trying to get her hands on this rare book, and the reason that she needs it is because it is what is needed to potentially save the world in which she grew up on. So there's a little bit of an emotional attachment to the storyline here, and just a lot of fun. This was probably the most fun I've had with an Invisible Library novel. The next prompt we have is 8 Maids a Milking, read while drinking something warm. This happened several times. Coffee, hot chocolate. It was just a coffee, hot chocolate type of year. Next we have 7 Swans a Swimming, read a book that takes place on or near water. For this I read The Girl in the Mirror by Rose Carlyle. This is a thriller, and it follows these twin sisters. They are adults now. They are identical twins. And they, through circumstances, end up on this yacht together. And one of them dies. The other sister takes her place. This was okay. As far as keeping you turning pages, yes. However, I felt that there was kind of a lack of character development. And that made it, like, really hard to be on board with, like, the twists that came. And that's really all I'm going to say, because it's a thriller and I don't want to give it away. It is worth a read, I think, but it's definitely not the best thriller I've ever read. The next prompt we have 6 Geese a Laying, read while lying down. That happened a lot because I read in bed frequently. The next prompt is 5 Golden Rings, read a book with gold on the cover. For this, I read The Vanishing Half by Bennett. This was a beautiful story. It follows twin girls again. Wow, another book with twin sisters, and they're identical in this one too. They come from this small town, and it is a black community. However, lightness is something that is very praised and valued in this community, and these sisters therefore are white passing. They dip out, they completely leave town, and they try to make their own way in the world. The one decides she's going to live her life as white, and the other one pretty much goes and marries the blackest man she can find and has a child with him. The one sister returns home, the other one is still out there living her white life. And it was just such a good story. It's very much a multi-generational story because we get the sisters' stories, but we also get the stories of their daughters. There were times when I was very frustrated because the sister who decides to live her life as though she is white, a lot of the things she says and the way she views blackness is very difficult to hear. Very difficult. But there was also other really great rep in here. There was some trans rep that I thought was really good because it brought up aspects of transitioning that I had never really considered before, and I thought that was very impactful. And really just the development of the characters, every single character in here was just fantastic, and I really urge you to pick this up. The next prompt was 4 Calling Birds, read during a live stream. That didn't end up happening. I don't know, I was just distracted. I was just reading, and I just couldn't be bothered to stop and look up live streams. The next prompt, 3 French Hens, read a book that takes place in a different country. For this, I read 1,000 Splendid Suns by Khaled Hosseini. Wow. What an impactful story. This takes place in Afghanistan over the course of, I don't know, 20 or 30 years. And it really is following these 2 women and how their lives intersect, and explores how the women's lives changed during the different regimes as war continually was changing who was in power. This broke me in so many ways. I was angry, I was crying, I was just upset at the injustice of it all. And then to realize that a lot of these things are things that I never even knew were happening. And it just reminds me how much of a bubble I do live in, and how privileged I am in my life. And I want to reread this book because I think there's a lot to be gained from it. The next prompt is Two Turtle Doves, read a book with dual perspectives. For this, I didn't finish this during the readathon. I finished it a few days after, but I'm going to talk about it here anyway, and that is The Empire of Gold. Okay, there, now it's not shining in your face. By S.A. Chakraborty. This is the final book in the David Bad trilogy. Oh my god, I'm really conflicted with how I feel about this still. I think overall the series is a good one. There we go. I really enjoyed it. The covers are gorgeous. The world is beautiful. And I almost wish that, and I don't say this often, but I kind of wish that they had added a fourth book, because there are a lot of aspects of the world that I think I would have liked to have explored more, because I wasn't quite understanding, even at the end of it, what was happening. But this was a very, you know, I don't want to even say much, because this is the final book in a trilogy. Okay, so all I'm going to tell you is the basic synopsis is that it follows this world, and jinn exist. We're in their country, basically, which is Daevabad, and then it has like surrounding lands where other jinn live. And our main protagonist is Nari. She has lived in Egypt her entire life, and in book 1 realizes that she is part jinn. And she's kind of entangled into this whole world and these warring factions, I guess, that she didn't even know existed. And it's very adventurous. It's very much, it's a great ride, honestly. And if you like fantasy, I think you'll enjoy this series, especially if you liked like the An Ember in the Ashes quartet. I think this will kind of be up your alley, because it has a lot of similar themes, because they're culturally similar. So a lot of the mythological, fantastical creatures that exist in that series also exist here. So there's some overlap there, but the stories themselves are completely different. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm still trying to decide how I felt about it. I don't even think I've rated it yet, because I just don't know. But I'm the minority. Most people say this is a perfect series and give it 5 stars across the board. So, you know, take everything I'm saying with like a handful of salt. Okay, before we leave, I'm just gonna cover like 3 random books that I picked up and read during this readathon that don't really have prompts per se. Well, I guess we'll talk about this one first. This is Next by Michael Crichton. I was surprised by how much I liked this. I probably would have given it 5 stars, except that, how do I put this? Okay, the male gaze is strong with this one. And for the most part, it was unnecessary. So we're just gonna leave it at that. It is very much a book that is exploring genetics and DNA and how far we should go with trying to manipulate genetics, how dangerous it can be, what the positives might be, things about can you patent part of the genome? Like, it very much a book for science nerds. I loved it, other than, you know, the one aspect I mentioned, and I think I'm gonna look into more by Michael Crichton. The last 2 books I read are part of the Royal Diaries series. I read Anastasia. Okay, this was heartbreaking, because the way the author wrote Anastasia, which is very comparable to what I know about her from the nonfiction that I've read about her, and just, she's very impish, she's incorrigible, she loves to play, and she's just so full of life. And reading about her and seeing that almost like firsthand, because it's her diary, not really her diary, but that's essentially what you're supposed to be in that headspace. and knowing how her story ends was really just an emotional experience for me. This is one of the better books in the Royal Diary series that I've read thus far. The other Royal Diaries book I've read, this one I've been waiting for a while because I couldn't find it for a long time, and that is Nzinga, what is this, Warrior Queen of Matamba, Angola, Africa. This was great. I think this is one of the only African princesses that are included in this series, and I really enjoyed this. I didn't know anything about Nzinga, but she has kind of a fascinating story. So I would really recommend just like doing a quick Google search and just reading. There's not a ton of information because she's an African princess from 1590s. Like, though she did go on to rule her country in the 1600s, most of what we have information-wise is from the Portuguese who interacted with her. So it's very kind of difficult to actually get the true story and a true look at who she was as a person, which I think is why this particular book definitely feels less personal than the Anastasia one did, because with Anastasia it's a lot more modern. We have her own diaries, we have tons of letters, there's a lot there. And I mean, until, well, when that book was written, there were still people actually living who had known her. So, you know, there's a difference there, and that explains, one, why this book is significantly shorter, and two, why it didn't have the pull that Anastasia did, but I really love that she was included anyway. So those are the books that I read during the 12 Days of Bookmas readathon. Let me know all your thoughts on the books in the comments below. If you're new here and you like my content, subscribe, stick around. I'd love to see you in my comments. Thank you for watching. I hope to see you soon. Bye.